So, welcome back yet again to hopefully what won't be a failure because I am trying something way out of my comfort zone and making a cake starting with cake flour. I think I've only done this one time before and this could be an utter disaster, but we are going to try to make this French apple cake with a brown butter, cream cheese, icing, and a caramel drizzle. This could be very, very bad, or it could be very, very good. But the ingredients are, it said 4 medium apples, and since these are all pretty darn small, I'm going to do that many. I have to peel them and cut them into 1/4-inch chunks and then set them aside while we get the rest of this ready. One big thing that it did say was to make sure that your butter and your egg were at room temperature, so they have been sitting out for a little bit. You also are going to need 10 ounces of cake flour, a teaspoon of baking soda, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Then you also are going to need a 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon and an 1/8 teaspoon of ground cloves. And let me tell you, I forgot how much I love the smell of cloves and just kind of want to huff it. You also need 4 ounces or 1 stick of butter, 3 ounces of vegetable oil. I'm using my giant jug of canola oil, a teaspoon of vanilla supplied to me by my very kind neighbor who made it for me last Christmas, and I am going through it at a high rate of speed, and 8 ounces of unsweetened applesauce. So I'm going to get to peeling and chunking up these apples, and I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so here goes nothing. I have my apples chopped into cute little cubes, and yet again, I still don't actually have any, whatchamacallit, lemon juice, so they're just gonna brown. That's the only thing the lemon juice is actually for, is to keep them from browning. Now, if you don't have a food scale, this might be a little bit more difficult because everything on this recipe was measured in ounces. So I am going to put this on here and then tear the scale so that it goes back to 0. And it calls for 10 ounces of this flour that I did not cut the hole big enough for. And then I'm going to just get it everywhere, aren't I? Alright, let me do this with 2 hands and then I'll film again. Alright, that's better. I don't know if you can see, but we are at 10.01. Hold on, let's see if I can get like 3 grains out of here. Just to get this precise measurements, because this is something I have never done before, and I actually want to be as close to right as I can. In fact, I think the only thing that I could really fudge with was the apples, since they didn't give me a precise measurement. Alright, 10 ounces. So, next we are going to mix our soda, salt, and spices in. So, let's do that. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger. And then also we're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, which is this one. So hold on. Right, 1/4 teaspoon of our nutmeg. 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and I freely admit I'm going to fudge this one because cinnamon, I just think you can't really have too much. And then the big one that I've never used in baking before, these ground cloves. And that, we get the tiniest amount of 1/8 of a teaspoon, but I think that's because it's so darn strong. Look at how dark that is. It looks really good. And it smells even better. Alright. So I figured while I was at it, I should get my oil measured out and also my sugar measured out, since it was also ounces. If you have a good food scale, you can switch between liquid measure and dry measure, which is what I did because obviously oil is liquid. So now it says to cream the butter and then add the oil and sugar until it's white and fluffy. I'm going to mostly spare you the blending noises, basically because I don't have enough hands to do this. So give me a second and let me get this blending. Well, it's getting there. My recipe says to whip it until it is white and fluffy, so I think that'll take another couple minutes. Alright, I think we have reached white and fluffy. Now we add egg and vanilla and mix it some more. That is my egg and my vanilla, and now we beat it again. I think it's kind of pretty. Now we're going to add in the dry a little at a time and mix it up some more, and then we're going to add the apples and the applesauce, fold them all together, and put it into our pie pans. Not pie pans, cake pans. You know what I mean. Thankfully, the next step calls for this to just be folded in, which means my mixer, which I don't know if you could hear those noises, I think it's giving up. I don't know what else to expect from a $11 Dollar Tree mixer, but hey, it's been doing pretty good. So I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to clean it really good and hope that it lives for a while longer. But we are going to fold our apples and our, how many ounces of applesauce? 8 ounces of unsweetened applesauce into this mix, and then put it in the pans and start it baking. Ounces, which actually did work out to be a cup of unsweetened applesauce, and our chopped apples, which it just said 2 to 4 peeled, chopped, medium-sized apples, so this might be too much, it might not be enough. I guess I'll find out when I bake it. A quick glimpse before they go into the oven for the baking. That's one, and here's the other. Bake well, my dudes. Bake well. While the cakes are baking, we're going to get a start on making the brown butter for the icing. Although the icing won't be put on till much later because the cakes have to completely cool, but you can make brown butter ahead of time. To do it, I recently found this out, so I feel kind of dumb trying to instruct people who probably already know about this, but basically you melt the butter, and then you're just going to let it bubble and bubble and bubble till all of the water has basically melted off, and you get these little beautiful golden brown bits at the bottom, and it's honestly phenomenal. I made it for the first time a couple weeks ago when I was doing yet another one of my ice cream recipes, which if you haven't seen it, I have a recipe for super easy ice cream. Anyway, I was digging around and I found out that to make butter pecan ice cream, you just needed some brown butter and some toasted pecans, and I had the toasted pecans. So I learned how to make brown butter and made butter pecan ice cream, and let me tell you, it was amazing. Just using that ice cream base that I have. But yeah, I'm gonna get started on this. I'm gonna pull out the cream cheese. I'm basically gonna make the icing ahead of time so that when the cake is cooled, I can just go ahead and do it. And then I'm not sure if I'm brave enough to make my own caramel. I did buy the stuff to do it, but I also bought a jar of Smucker's caramel sauce. Just in case, because I don't have a candy thermometer and I'm not that brave. I will try to make it, but if it comes out as a disaster, I have a backup. So that's always a good thing. Anyway, I'm going to play with my butter now. So, I'm not going to lie to you. This is fun, and I like this sizzling noise. So in the typical way of the world, one of my cake pans is done, the other one is not, so I gave it 2 more minutes and I'm going to check it again. But this one looks really, really good, actually. You can see all the apple chunks in it, and it smells wonderful. So, they have to cool for about 15 to 20 minutes in the pan, and then I can turn them out and put them into either the refrigerator or the freezer and let them firm up a little bit more. Alright, the first one is turned out onto a cooling rack. Honestly, it smells amazing. So hopefully it tastes good. Hopefully it looks good when I'm done with it. That's also a thing. But yeah, crossing my fingers. Also, it looks like we're getting a good sunset, so I think I'm going to go see if I can get pictures of it. So, as you can see, I have mixed my 8 ounces of regular unsalted butter and 8 ounces of softened cream cheese in a bowl, and now I'm going to add my brown butter, mix it again, and then to that, very slowly, you're going to add approximately 20 ounces of powdered sugar. So I'm sure you can tell with all of the butter and sugar that this is not a healthy recipe, despite the fact that it has apples in it. Especially not once we add caramel to the top of the whole thing. But it should be tasty. It smells really good. So after adding the brown butter to this, I realized that the bowl that it was in was not big enough. So I had to pause and wash my bowl, but back to mixing. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, this is not exactly the way it looked in the picture. In the picture it was a lot whiter. Maybe I browned my butter a bit more than it needed to be. I don't know. But it tastes good, and that's the important part. So, I mean, anything with this much sugar in it should taste good, right? So I'm going to put this into the fridge, let it kind of do its thing, and let the cake cool, and then later we're going to try to put this all together. This will be the fun part, attempting a layer cake. I'm not sure if I'm brave enough to try making caramel. At least not tonight. But, like I said, I have a jar of caramel that will probably work just as well. So, let's see what this all looks like when it gets cooled. Okay, so I didn't actually film myself frosting this bottom layer, but as you can see, I got it frosted. Now the tricky part that I'm kind of scared about is transferring this layer on top without it falling apart. And it wants to fall apart. It's okay, we'll fix it with icing. We will totally fix it with icing. Yep. Oh, by the way, I did wash my hands before I did this. Yep, we are totally going to fix this with icing after I wash my hands again. So I'll be right back. really pretty.
Yep.
And then I chickened out and I did not make the caramel. Actually, I didn't make the caramel because I realized that I used up all the butter making the cake. So thankfully, I have caramel to drizzle. I think we need to drizzle more than that, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's better. I think I just slopped it off the edge of the plate. Shh, don't tell. Oh, that's a lot of caramel. I do know that the little pieces of cake that were left on the pan were very good. If Ian, who is running the camera, would like to mention that they were good, he could. Nice thumbs up, son. So I'm kind of proud of this for my very, very first layer cake I've ever made. Is it perfect? Heck no. Nothing I make is perfect. Is it a lot prettier than most of the cakes that I make? Definitely. Does it taste good? Hopefully. A little bit more caramel. Is that enough caramel yet, Ian?
Sure.
Okay. And there we have it. A French caramel apple cake with a brown butter cream cheese icing and a caramel drizzle. Unfortunately, it's not a homemade caramel drizzle, but I won't tell if you don't. And I'll try and get a really pretty picture of a slice for a thumbnail, but we all see how my thumbnails usually turn out, so anyway, thanks as always.